Hello, everybody. Happy Thursday, and welcome to today's ClearanceJobs webinar. How cleared recruiting has changed in the last 10 years. Insights from our partners here at Amentum. I'm Jill Hamilton, content director here at ClearanceJobs. So, welcome everybody. Thanks for spending part of your day with us. We're going to talk about the evolution of cleared recruiting and where it's headed next. Today, we're joined by our partners at Amentum. They are a global engineering and technology solutions company supporting US and allied defense, intelligence, and critical national security missions worldwide. They have a workforce that spreads across more than 80 countries. So they are right here at the center of the conversation about what it really takes to recruit and retain clear talent at scale. So welcome to our panelists here. We have Jasmine Holmes, Jason Serrato, and Keith Corpening. Appreciate you guys joining us today. And I know you each bring a different perspective about bringing in your Amentum's talent, recruiting, the hiring ecosystem. So we're just going to walk through how cleared recruiting landscape just has shifted over, the last decade, looking at candidate expectations, competition with commercial tech, new tools. Oh, those are always ever evolving. Technology grows, and of course, workforce trends. We also all get impacted by that here. So, before we kick off some of our questions, just some housekeeping notes for you all. We are going to have some time for question and answers at the end. So, as any questions come to mind with things we're saying, just feel free to go ahead, drop them into the Q&A box throughout the session, and we would love to get to some of your questions, or we can follow up with them later, and we'll do our very best to get to as many of them as possible before we wrap up. So, without with that, we'll just keep going on, and let's get started. So let's talk to panelists because we want to hear from your expertise and what you have to say and your perspective on everything. Let's start talking about industry evolution. So, looking back over the last decade, what would you say for you guys? What would stand out as the single biggest shift? That's a big question. Biggest shift in cleared recruiting.
Well, I think I'll jump in first. I think for me, first of all, thank you for having me. So coming from a program manager's perspective, I think the biggest thing for me is just the amount of competition for the same pool of cleared talent.
Mm.
And it's just in today's time, and even as it's powered by AI tools, we just have to be quicker. We can't afford to wait weeks to respond to candidates, right? So we have to be, a little quicker to get the talent that we're looking for. And I think for me as a program manager, that's the one of the biggest things that just sticks in my mind.
Yeah. How long would you have you worked in this space as a program manager?
So for Amentum, a little over a year, but kind of writ large, probably about maybe 15 years to include
Yeah.
my military career as well. So um,
Awesome. Awesome.
And I'll just add to that. On one hand, technology has made the recruitment process a little easier and faster, while at the same time, the technology involved with the work has made the needs and the requirements more specific. So,
Mm.
we have a faster, more competitive process in a very competitive and potentially shrinking talent pool. So, things aren't necessarily easier, they're happening faster and more competitive. So I think one of the things that's happening is there's a lot of noise in the process, and you have a lot more data. I think from the candidate side, there's a lot more visibility to options, but also a lot more visibility to potential distractions and over the feeling of being overwhelmed from
Hmm.
an employer side and an organizational side. There is this need to react very quickly, but also trying to balance the technology and automation within those relationships and that human touch. So nothing has gotten necessarily easier, as it's gotten faster, and as the capability has increased. So all of it has just gotten to think of the right word, maybe tighter, right? It's become more competitive at a faster rate.
Yeah, no, it's a really great point. I used to work in defense contracting myself, and I was thinking back like 2 decades ago when I was starting out and how different it is now and how noisy it is, just how much that would be for you to compete in that level of noise that's out there. Um, but yeah, any thoughts on that, Jasmine?
Yeah, I agree honestly with Keithon and Jason on both indices. So from a recruiting standpoint, we go from competing against marketing and benefits and um, word of mouth. So right now, a lot of things are social media based. So one wrong post or one wrong repost can really set the candidate experience or deter people. So a
Hmm.
lot more visibility and making sure that we maintain a excellent candidate experience, whether we have a position or we don't have a position. Because at this point, like they said, the candidate pool is getting a lot tighter. People are afraid of the government industry or the cleared industry. So we are combating and comforting that it's still a very promising career path to go down. So kind of combating all of the outside noise to make sure we maintain finding the ideal candidates.
Yeah, no, that's so true. One of the things you made me think of was just even the shift in what you need from cleared talent. So how have you all seen that change in terms of, different roles perhaps that you're seeing on contracts coming through or what you're projecting for future contracts or skills? Obviously, there's a lot of AI chatter. We just like to sprinkle that in everywhere, or as well as the industries that it's required. What have you all seen there?
So I'll take this one starting from a candidate standpoint. What we've seen in the evolution of recruiting in the cleared industry is and what we're seeing coming down the pipeline is that it's going to get tighter. Unfortunately, we're not seeing a lot of candidates or people in general going into intelligence or going
Mm.
into that field so that those niche positions are getting tighter and tighter and that skill set is 100% getting tighter and tighter, so it's still motivating our up and coming generations that this is still a promising career and making it cool again to
Mhm.
join into the cleared industry and showing all the benefits. And it's not just government, it's so much more experience and knowledge and travel that can come with these roles. So it's still trying to make it fun to draw people into the career and take away from the fear or the worry of the instability that they have.
And I agree with what Jasmine was saying. And that puts the onus, and I'll just use myself as an example to make sure that I am transparent with candidates about what we offer. And along with what Jasmine was saying, work-life balance continues to be like one of the things that everybody highlights. And, I'm able to articulate that, especially with Amentum, because, that's one of the things that, we support. And I think things like that, work-life balance. Of course, the compensation conversation always comes up, but the more we as a company can set ourselves apart, with, what I would consider our value proposition, I think that kind of gives us a little bit more of an edge. But I agree with what Jasmine was just saying. So.
That's true. Yeah, I mean, it is helpful I think your marketing goes a long way in connecting with those candidates to be able to reach them for where they're at. And one of the things with working in national security is that mission and getting them right messaging to connect them to that mission. I mean, I remember starting out in my 20s and just be like, it's just everything is a little bit overwhelming. You don't really understand how a contract or proposal or period of performance works or all those different things. And that can create a lot of questions and instability as a candidate until you really understand what those different terms mean. It's really helpful when you have a recruiting team or a hiring manager who's willing to kind of walk alongside you on that. So those are great points. So let's talk technology and tools. What role would you say technology's played in transforming cleared recruiting for you from, AI, automation? applicant tracking systems, I'm sure, have come a long way. So what have you guys seen in that process for you?
So I'll jump at this one. So um, leading the function for Amentum, we have gone through a series of mergers and acquisitions and are in a state of constant transformation. So part of our everyday existence is just kind of consolidating our tech stack, harmonizing our tech stack, and driving efficiencies through the tools in how we operate. Beyond that, we're trying to innovate and get new technologies to drive efficiency, like we said, to meet the speed of the market and the expectations of the candidates. As it relates to kind of where we are on our journey, I would say for the most part, we've been using AI and automation mostly for driving efficiency and expanding our reach. So things like candidate communications and outreach, things like coordinating elements of the process, things like, coming out of the pandemic, virtual recruiting grew in popularity, but we've leveraged that and it's here to stay. And it's expanded our reach with career fairs and events and virtual sessions and all different kinds of formats to reach different audiences. So we are on a journey here where we're continuing to look at additional tools and look at, virtual assistants and AI assisted elements for both the candidate and the recruiter. I wouldn't say we're as far along as some other companies in the space, but what I will say is the biggest impact that the technology has had is leveraging it for efficiency has freed up our recruiters to really dig in more with the relationship side. So, like I said, using these things for virtual events and expanding our reach and going to audiences that we may not have gone to if we had to do all of this in person, we've really gotten deeper with a lot of the programs and partnerships and relationships that we have, whether it be with universities or with military programs or with job boards or a variety of things like this webinar today. So, what's happened is the technology has created time and capability to get deeper in some of these relationships with partners, with candidates, with touch points for us. And then we're continuing to look at how we can continue to leverage it, both for the candidate experience and for the recruiter experience as we're on this transformation journey. But I think for us at Amentum, one of the things that people definitely feel is our connection to the mission and the work that we're doing. And part of how we have a compelling employee value proposition is still that interaction with people. So the ability of the technology to kind of extend that reach and enhance that human connection has really been maybe some of the secret to our success.
I'll definitely piggyback off of Jason. He's completely correct. I've seen a lot of companies go through so much AI that they lose that touch with the candidate. And one of my favorite things about Momentum and our mission is candidate experience. And the only way to maintain candidate experience is to talk to our candidates. No pressing a button is going to make a connection with hearing a baby cry in the background or hearing a dog bark. Nobody can make those connections the way you can being live on the phone as you could AI. Also, people don't want to feel like just another number, and it can feel that way when you use so much technology in an industry like this. So, one of my favorite things is that we utilize AI in a sense of efficiency. It helps us dissect resumes in a different way if it's a more niche position, but our main focus is to still make that contact with our candidates and develop that rapport and relationship, which is key in this industry as it continues to shrink. So and you can express and show how much we do care about not only the mission, but every person we speak with.
Yeah. I mean, I really think using the technology to be able to be more efficient and to um, also like meet the level of volume that you need to hit when there's so many candidates on the market, and there's also the heart behind that to want, even if they're not right for one of your positions, to be able to connect with them on a human level, because it's a small world in national security. You're only so many degrees apart.
Yeah.
until the next proposal comes in and you actually need that person you talked to 3 months ago. So staying connected is so important and having that human connection. But it's also it keeps you more secure as well as an organization when you don't lose that human component, because people love to candidates are wary of national security because there are threat actors out there. And so I think keeping that human connection that you have in there, using AI and technology for efficiency, for expanding your reach, using it in that with that motive in mind helps your security side as well, so that your candidates know they can trust you. You know, that is a real baby crying in the background. It's okay to
Yeah.
have a dog barking. Hopefully mine won't during this session, but hey,
Yeah.
we'll
I've
see a bit.
been Yeah, I've been leading talent acquisition teams for over 20 years, and I've also crossed over and worked for vendors in the
Mm,
HR technology space, some of which are delivering AI capability to the market. So I like to say I've been having this conversation from three different sides of the table for a large part of my career, and I've always kind of said this practice of talent acquisition is both an art and a science, right? And I like to think that we leverage the science to emphasize and highlight and surface more of the art. And if you are winning in this conversation, you're compelling someone to understand what you're doing and how you make a difference and how you're differentiating yourself from other opportunities and the competition and what this really means. And I use the phrase kind of purpose over a paycheck, but I also understand kind of what it means to make someone feel goosebumps, right?
yeah,
To feel goosebumps about the work they're going to do, or to feel goosebumps about who they're going to work with, or to feel goosebumps about the team that they're going to join and the team they're going to support. So I think one of the things that I look for when I say, how are we successful as a team, is the evolution of the conversation from someone saying, I want to work in this industry, to I want to work at Amentum, to I want to work with Jasmine,
Right.
yeah,
right? And I don't want to lose that with technology if the whole process is automated.
Yeah. I think that all kind of as I'm listening and kind of thinking back on some of my experience, it's the culture, right? That culture is kind of like that thread that I think pulls everything together that Jason was talking about and Jasmine was mentioning. I think culture sells, right? If they buy into your
mm,
culture, then you've won. So
yeah. Well, are there any specific innovations or tools that you'd say has had the biggest impact on how Amentum sources clear talent, whether it's automated screening or talent intelligence? You alluded to some tools that would help you parse out resumes, or especially for niche roles, um, different things that have stood out for you for your team.
Me specifically, I'll be honest, I am still very much old school. I like deep diving and digging. I love referrals. I love
Hmm.
connecting with one person and seeing that they have five other people that do a job that I need and connecting with those. So we do have the ability to use different enhancements using some of these sourcing tools. They
Hmm.
offer different enhancements through them with sourcing, which are great, and it helps find that person a little bit quicker and a little easier. But I love the hunt.
Yeah,
That is recruiting. Is you're literally on the hunt. So although the tools make it a lot easier to find those candidates within those websites, because the sites are saturated, all things considered right now in national security, those sites are saturated. So it does make it easier. So they do have tools where, like a Boolean search, where you can just pop
hmm,
it in, or you can put in a copy of a resume and it helps find resumes that closely match. So that's pretty good. It's awesome. And it's great tools
yeah,
to utilize, especially for our niche and harder positions. Um, but
yeah,
yeah, I think that's pretty much it. A lot of the recruiters are still very much loving the old school way of recruiting and getting referrals, as you can see
yeah,
above me. Send me your referrals.
yeah.
So I still value that part because again, it's making connections.
Right,
So it's still making sure you make those connections with other people. Even if I don't have a job for you, Jill, I may have a job for a friend of yours. And
right.
you're more
Absolutely.
likely to refer me because you had a great conversation with me. So
Yes.
I,
Yeah.
w- I will say, and I think you were alluding to this, in my title, it gives away a little bit of the answer to this. So, I recently joined Amentum. I'm only in my third month with the organization, but I've been in this space for a while. I've worked for other defense and government contractors. But in joining the organization and helping the organization on this transformation journey, the role that I was brought into is global talent acquisition and strategic workforce planning. So when you're talking about what tools are we using that are potentially changing how this work is done or advancing our ability in this space, I think one that I would highlight is leveraging AI, and you touched on talent intelligence around strategic workforce planning.
Hmm.
And I think that's been a hot button conversation in the talent acquisition, talent management, HR world for the last 3 or 4 years. But I think we are leveraging it specifically in new ways as we partner strategic workforce planning with resource management. So, resource management at the business level, responding to programs and contracts and proposals, but strategic workforce planning at the enterprise level, planning for, total life cycle workforce planning with succession planning, leadership development, university recruiting, dealing with skill gaps, skill development, what are the certifications we need, what are the pipeline programs we need to develop, and what does it look like at the 30,000-foot level to then
Hmm.
support life on the ground at the program level. So that could not be done without tools like AI incorporating market data, skills data, gathering all of the organizational data, and leveraging that capability and that technology to get through that information in real time. So, yes, we're using dedicated talent acquisition tools, like I said, for campaign messaging and for efficiency and for things like scheduling. But at a broader scale, a big part of our evolution is this combining strategic workforce planning with resource management with talent acquisition.
Yeah. I mean, you alluded to the pace of where everything is heading. Everything's moving at such a faster pace as well, which is not something, it probably felt like it was a fast pace 10, 10 plus years ago. And now we're like, oh, this is faster actually. And so
Yeah.
you're right, managing the contracts you have in hand, the contracts expected that you're going to have to source for versus where the direction of the federal government and the world is going, and trying to gear up for that is definitely a balancing act, that you have a big job that you just stepped into to do. So,
Yeah.
but I also think at the same time, I love, Jasmine, how you balance, you call them old school, but it's just being human and connecting with people, because a lot of times we talk candidate experience, which we're about to segue into, like, you hear typically like we got stuck in the ATS black hole, which doesn't really exist. It just meant that you didn't actually meet the basic requirements probably to get through to the next step. But it feels like that sometimes on the other end. So it's so great to hear like just the different ways that you keep that human side to really want to connect with them, and keep them engaged throughout that, which is just so important. So let's talk candidate experience. Any changes that you've noticed in candidate expectations for cleared roles?
So I'll start. The biggest one, honestly, is everybody still wants to work from home.
Yeah, me
That is
too.
still, I know, that is probably still the hardest thing to break through is working the remote working or being a hybrid role. But with national security, we have to maintain and remember that a lot of the stuff with the mission cannot leave
Hmm.
those walls. So it's
Right.
reminding them for the protection of them and the company and the mission that these positions are no longer offered in that role. And that was honestly for a temporary situation during that
Right.
time. Other than that, that's pretty much the biggest one the hurdles. And then of course you have benefits and salary expectations are different, widespread, and it comes from research. So a lot of our
Mhm.
candidates do their own market research, which sometimes is not exactly pinpoint or truly the price. of some of these contracts and some of the roles. But those
Right.
are really the biggest expectations that I've seen a shift in, um, from what I see on my end as a recruiter.
Yeah. And Keith, you alluded this earlier, culture being a major differentiator in today's market. So you want to elaborate more on, oh, or you can also talk about candidate expectations if you had those. I don't know if I cut you off in there, but also like, what aspects of Amentum's culture resonate or you see resonate with cleared candidates?
So I think a couple of things. So from a culture perspective, it's I can speak from my personal experience when I came on board with the Amentum. I immediately felt like I was part of the team, right? From the time that I was HR engaged HR all the way through to the time I stepped through the doors in my new role. It was just a step by step caring, and then once I'm in the space, it's the my supervisor and his supervisor. Everybody's just they really want to make sure that one, you understood the mission, and two, that you had the right support to be able to execute that mission. And then kind of segueing into, some of the challenges as Jasmine was mentioning. I think that work-life balance in the cleared space can sometimes be a challenge, right? Because I
Mm.
mean, if you're in the clear space, 9 times out of 10, you're in one of those jobs. Well, hey, sometimes you may have to work a little bit over. Sometimes, you might miss that birthday. And we try hard not to do that, but when we come on board, we understand it's about the mission. We want to make sure our customers are happy and we're supporting them. We also want to take care of the people. And always in the back of my mind, coming up through the ranks in the army, mission first, people always, right? And so that's just one of those things that some people may not understand coming in. It's our job to at least be transparent enough to say, hey, look, we'll do everything we can to make sure you can do X, Y, and Z, but also remember, we have a mission to support. So it's how do we walk that fine line and not scare anybody away, so.
Right. Yeah. No, that's helpful. And I think it's one of those things where candidates feel every step of the way. That's the challenge in making sure um, that gets communicated from, whether you're posting a job description or you're on a or initial recruiting call to they're being onboarded till then now they're 3 months into working there. It is a hard thing to do to make sure there's no cracks in between all the different steps. You're passing the baton on to the next person. So that takes a lot, I'm sure, work on your end to support from the candidate to the employee, and continue on from there. So it's great that that's a focus there. All right, so let's talk just different challenges and solutions I love. It's always good to know when there's a challenge, there's also different solutions. We don't have to always look at the negative side. We can be a little bright side as well, coming to the end of the year. What would you say are the biggest challenges recruiters face today compared to 10 years ago?
So I'll be honest, I think it's just the shrinking candidate pool and the competitive nature of our industry. There are so many contractors out there, and we're essentially looking for some of the same roles. So that, making that connection, having your elevator pitch, having the benefits conversation, making sure you're truly selling the company, the culture, the mission. Like Jason said, we want to make our candidates have goosebumps after the conversation, or are excited to have the conversation, or excited to Google search us, or excited to make it to that next step. And so it's caveating that. So I'll be honest, I think the biggest challenge is one, the shrinking pool of candidates that we have available, and then just the saturated market that we are in when it comes to government contractors. And like you, I think, Jill, you had mentioned national security is kind of a scary place to want to enter or want to stay in. So we're kind
Mhm.
of combating all of those concerns and worries and making sure that we reassure all our candidates as much as possible to make that decision to join Amentum.
Yeah.
I think another challenge is this, and maybe this ties into my previous comment around linking talent acquisition and talent management and workforce planning, is this desire and need for visibility to continuous learning opportunities. And what does that mean for our career paths? And what does that mean
Mm,
for kind of this mindset of not just employment, but employability? Right. So thinking beyond this current program, what's next? And what does this mean in the construct of this organization that I've just joined? Right. And what does this mean for where this is headed long term and the growth of this business and the areas that we're growing into? So part of that comes from being transparent and having some level of personalization for the employee experience and the candidate experience. But also part of that is allowing some people to drive their career. And
hmm
that's a little but that's a little difficult too, because at the same time you have certain commitments to the program you're on, right? So that creates guardrails and parameters for your requirements and responsibilities to the work you're doing now, while always trying to create some ability to learn and prepare and plan for what's next. So I think, that's a conversation people are not just asking for, they're expecting. And that's probably a lot different than something we would have talked about 10 years ago.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Keith, go ahead.
Oh, no, no, no. I was just gonna kind of I guess related, but I think the retention, right, of the talent,
Mm,
So from my perspective, I have to be, very aware that, like Jasmine said, candidates are always on the hunt, they're always looking for, bigger and better. So my job is to make sure that bigger and better is at Amentum. So whether it's a, recognition program, whether it's, opportunities to grow professionally, those things I think are some of the tools that we have in our kit bag to, retain the talent. And so as Jason and Jasmine were talking, retention was kind of like the big thing that's on my mind.
yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, that's so good. I mean, it is one of those interesting things where you hear all this chatter about how jobs today are just change, are they're going to change more and more. It used to be you go to school, you major in finance, you get to job, you work in just specifically finance, and that's the lane you stay in. And only a few people would then kind of, go off and do something a little bit more adjacent where it use that, so it is changing the idea of like what you majored in and what your degrees are in is usually like a launch pad and where you skill from there, depending upon what you're naturally good at or where you desire to go, is really important. And that's that whole upskilling thing as the workforce continues to change is both a challenge, but also kind of exciting, a lot of the opportunities that you have. So to have an organization that really is thinking proactively about that is an exciting place to be at. Um, but I would say even there's just even knowing myself when I was back in my 20s, just starting out for contractors, like contracting 101, even like to your point, Keith, explaining to them, here's what your period of performance is. Here's what it looks like where maybe you might be thinking like this on this contract you've had this role but now you've had 5 years of experience, well now you've leveled up, so in order for us to work with you, like that takes, to your point Jason, some of their own ownership in that, because it's like a partnership where it's not just like you want people who are going to partner with you and who are going to work together with you for their careers as well. So that's really kind of like, I'll say, the sweet spot, but
And to piggyback on that, this type of work is a two-way street because you're dealing with the requirements coming from the program. So you're also subject to how specific are the requirements that you're given, and
right,
are they accurate, and are they truly needed, as you're trying to potentially open up the audience and do things like look at transferable skills or look at certifications and all those different things. So one of the things that we find really works best is when the program team and the capture team and the HR team and the recruiters are working together through that proposal process and that recruitment process to truly understand requirements and truly
right,
have that conversation around talent, to know, like in any talent acquisition scenario, do we truly have an accurate job description? Do we truly have an accurate understanding of what the work is and what the talent is that we need? So that way we can actually go after the right talent that includes the entire audience that we can consider, right? Sometimes these requirements can be so specific and so buttoned up that they're designed for a certain audience that's already kind of
Right.
identified, you know.
Right. Well, Keith, you brought up a really good conversation about retention. Maybe we could just chat about that for a second. Like, what have you seen the conversation around that? Has that changed even in the last decade? What do cleared employees expect today that maybe they didn't, even a decade ago?
I think one of the things is definitely the career progression. I'm instantly asked, hey, what are the opportunities to grow within the company? Right. And I
Mm,
think that goes to someone's mindset of, hey, I'm thinking long term here. I want to be with this company forever. What is the potential for me to, gain a new skill or perhaps, get some experience on one program and maybe move within the company to another program so that I could keep, moving forward in my career. And one of the things I normally do when I'm talking to new employees, I always ask them, hey, what are your goals? What are your objectives? And a lot of them will say, "Hey, I want to work for 4 or 5 years here, and start my business." you know,
think I
want to
think you
leave.
might
So,
be. Oh, there you are. You're back.
or am I? It's that
We're talking about
technology over here.
technology here. It's so good,
Right. Right. And so I always try to find ways that I can best help an employee get to where they want to be, whether they are with the company or eventually they decide that they want to move on and, start their own business or, do something else in life. So, I think that's, for me, it's a constant, I don't want to say walking a fine line, but it's something I always try to keep in the back of my mind that, this individual, is looking to grow. How can I help them do that?
Yeah. No, I think that's fantastic. I mean, my years ago, it used to be you knew your value was associated for what you could do for the organization or for that specific contract. Because again, I interact with a lot of candidates out in the industry, and hear about them wanting to get into the space or how do I get this job, and especially non-clearance holders. Well, how do I get the security clearance? I'm like, well, they can't. And I often tell them, like, companies often can't wait for you to get that. It's not you. You're probably fantastic. We're not questioning how fantastic or amazing you are. It's just, it's profitability and billing, and you can't wait that long. And it's the same thing, but I always remembered that working on contracts, like if they can't bill for me, then they're not going to want to work with me. And so having that partnership to work together to, like, I'm aware of the fact that it's your business. You have to operate that way. But however, you care about the people too. And to your point, Keith, like when you care about them as well, at the same time, you can say, hey, if it's the best thing for you to do to launch a business, but you never know where they're going to come back, and that the valuable person has that great relationship with you. So nurturing that throughout every different part of your business is such a amazing offering that you have. So, well, let's look ahead to the future if we can before we get to some questions. So again, reminding, if you have any questions, you're in the audience, pop them in the chat. I do see a few there in the Q&A that we'll get to in just a minute. But looking ahead, what skills or approaches do you think recruiters will need to stay competitive in this space going forward? That's a big question.
I'll go first.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I think increasingly tools like AI and automation will make the systems we use disappear, right? So the last probably decade or so, it's been a real transactional administrative process. And I think we've already talked about the success really comes from the relationship and the communication and the information. So part of this is becoming more of a talent advisor, Part of this is really understanding the business and having that business acumen to know how this candidate could potentially fit into the business need. And if they can't, like you just mentioned, maybe when they can come back around to fit into this business need, and how the organization makes money, or how that candidate can help the organization save money, or what are those different requirements that is going to make this relationship work. When I started in talent acquisition years ago, I was always told it's an exchange of information, right? So I think that really is what is left on the table when all the systems and the transactions disappear and fall away. So that expectation raises. And the other part about it is the candidates can get the basic answers on their own. They can go to the chatbot, the virtual assistant, the chat GPT, and get the basic answers by the time they come to you. So when they come to the recruiter, their expectation of what you know and what they're asking of you is going to be much higher. So I think that level of what you have to offer, what strategy you can provide to them, what strategy you can provide to the business and to the hiring manager, is only going to get more and more strategic and higher business driven.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Jason more. I think as a recruiter, we will probably need to adapt and be more of a powerhouse of knowledge, not only for the company, but the mission, future missions, just knowing truly our industry inside and out. Like Jason said, everything's a click away, all the information, but to truly get that deep embedded mission and culture information about Amentum and what we have coming down the pipeline is to be that powerhouse of knowledge. And I always say I'm only as good as my lead. So my hiring managers, my program managers. So as long as you can continue to develop the relationship with your management team and get all of that information, we'll be a lot successful in the future. We'll be able to combat what they think they know from Google, because a lot of times you can Google, but it's not always as accurate as the people who are boots on the ground running those programs and the missions.
So true. I just was at an event yesterday. It was all focused on AI. And one of the encouraging things is sometimes people write it off right now as like, oh, it gave me like a dumb answer, or it did this or whatnot. And they're like, this is just the basic, they compare it to like when you first got the iPhone. The very first iteration of the
Yeah.
iPhone was so basic. And then now, which compared to what you can do now, and the technology continues to grow. So while there's complaints now, which is good to be wary and poke about at it, and you guys are doing this great job of keeping that human side in there and making sure it's just expanding your reach and not overtaking for the person or the human side of recruiting. At the same time, to your point, Jason, it's going to expand your memory of who you've had connections with. And it's like when we put people's birthdays in our calendar and set up reminders, that doesn't make us less personable because we didn't store it in our brains and we still texted them happy birthday. Like you're going to be able to follow up with people in the industry much more as you go forward and see all those connections, because it is a very connected space that we work in.
Yeah. How do
Yeah.
we shift again from being reactive to being proactive? And I was having this conversation yesterday with one of my colleagues around how do we move from always helping to being able to flip that to showing caring, right? Because
Yeah.
caring is proactive, helping is reactive, right?
Yeah. It's so good. All right. So next 10 years ahead question. What will define the next era of cleared recruiting? I mean, you've talked about staying competitive, but even just looking at what you're seeing or projecting to see, even in, I mean, no one has the crystal ball, of course. So, obviously subject to change depending upon what government wants. But, there's technology, mission needs, AI, new clearance pathways. You've mentioned global competition. You are a global company. So what are some different things you see in that was going to define this next era of recruiting in the years ahead? Another big question. Future ones are always so hard.
I was going to see if Keith was going to jump on this one first as a hiring manager. I'll take it first. I think there's definitely going to be a shift in mission needs because we've already seen a shift in mission needs already. So I can only imagine what it'll be 10 years from now. I'm not willing to predict what they will be, but I will predict that they will be different. And then we're probably going to have to come up with new clearance pathways, right? Because there's a demand today, and the process that we have, while the need is faster, the process is getting slower. So we're going to need some new clearance pathways to maintain the ability to deliver. And the one there that you mentioned that I can definitely already feel is this kind of global demand, right?
Mm.
How do we meet the need for delivering to not only the U.S. needs but our allies?
Yeah, like Jason said, our mission needs are going to change. It's inevitable, especially all the things that are going on right now in national security in the world in general. So, with mission needs changing, that will also mean candidate pool will change, and those niche roles in those missions are going to have to combat that candidate pool. So, we are going to have to strive, encourage, and promote, national security and making sure that when those mission needs change, we have a skill set and we have a candidate pool that's going to meet those changes, which is going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge. It's going to be a challenge motivating our generations coming up to want to be a part of the missions that we have going on or the future missions that we have going on. Um, and like you said, clearance pathways, 100%. It is a challenge. The time frames and the demand are two total different levels. So I would love to see that clearance process be just a little bit faster, so we
Mm.
can have a lot more candidates on the ground running for those positions.
Yeah, I think that would also probably tie into being focused more on skill-based hiring versus, traditional, hey, I have a degree. Okay, but can you do the work, kind of thing. So um
Yeah.
my little 2 cents to that, but so I was trying to pull it out of my memory brain, but Jasmine kind of sparked it. But yeah, I was thinking more skill-based hiring going.
Yeah. Well, that is one that should be in the future coming. We do see it change to the government, where the government is now allowed to do that. And it just takes time to translate over to what contractors are allowed to do. We need like actual proposals to be able to be changed, labor categories, those things. So, but as those things trickle down, I think you're right, Keith, is you'll see some more skills-based hiring um, in the years ahead of us, hopefully sooner rather than later, right? Um, so you did allude to this, Jasmine, talking about the security clearance and the pathways. Yeah, I did have two questions on this, which I think are helpful. Just a little bit of a softball question on if you do sponsor people security clearance, specifically a top secret one, and or are there ways that maybe Keith, you'd have the answer for this? Do you put people through to hopefully upgrade their security clearance? Maybe say they came on board with either a public trust or a secret. Do you ever find ways to put them in for a role that would require, this comes even into your workforce planning, Jason, like things coming down the pipeline. Is that something that you have your eyes towards?
I'll go from a recruiting standpoint. It is going to be contract specific. So it depends on the
Right.
contract. Some contracts will allow you to upgrade clearances or sponsor. Not all will allow that. Now, as a company, is it something that we could possibly looking forward to? As a pipeline, 100%, which is probably something that as a company will be something that we have to looking forward to kind of combat those clearance pathway issues or just meeting the supply and demand. But yeah, right now it is dependent on the contracts. So some we can upgrade, some we can sponsor, some you have to already have it active and ready to be considered for that role.
Yep, I was going to say, specifically for the program that I'm in charge of right now. That's exactly right. really have to have it coming in, which, I guess could speak to another challenge,
Hmm.
but yeah, I I have not experienced where on like this program or other experience where we're able to upgrade kind of in stride,
Right.
so to speak, right? So typically you're coming in with the clearance based on contract needs. So yeah.
Right. Right. And that's partly part of the partnership, I would say, I would think between the candidate and their management to be having that conversation as well, to know that those options could potentially be there, especially if you're looking at it from the recruiting side, Jasmine. Obviously, then you'd have it in other areas, but that's there, when you have a manager who's looking, I've got these other contracts coming down. Um, then maybe this person will be willing to go on. I mean, that's what happened to me when I was in my early 20s. Come in, you get this, and like, hey, we're going on for this contract. Would you be willing to go forward for a top secret? Sure, why not? So it does happen, but like you said, it's contract specific, it's role specific, those types of things. I thought this was a good question, a little bit summarizing. If somebody has applied multiple times, perhaps to Amentum, but they're not um, maybe didn't align with some of those specific jobs or hearing feedback, are there techniques or things that they should maybe do to put their hand up to get connected with you?
I'm happy to share my LinkedIn or my email. I'll say not every resume is built for every position you apply to.
Right.
My advice is to always cater your resume to each job you're applying to. You want to make sure that you're highlighting those keywords and those key duties and certifications within that you hold within your resume. We do read resumes from top to bottom, but if you don't have those keywords in there, or you miss putting in those keywords, and it's just a broad resume, it can cause you to be passed up for a role. Um, so that's probably like the biggest tool I'll say. Everybody has a generic resume that you apply to, but you just want to make sure you're catering each resume to each position. It can be tedious, it can be a little frustrating to do so, but with this competitive market that we are in, it is essential to make sure your resume matches the role that you're applying to.
100%. Couldn't agree more. I mean, it is a heavy candidate market, with just a lot of the changes this past year. People coming out with a lot of different experience and then trying to figure out what they want to do. And so that does make it you know, something to navigate going forward for both the candidate and for recruiters looking to fill contract positions. It is something to make sure that you are definitely refining your resume and making sure it's specific to that job. I did love this one, and uh, let me find it. Sorry. Regarding the increased availability of technology, do you on the panel find that younger generations actually prefer less face-to-face engagements during the recruitment process? Coming from an old school, sit down for coffee guy, that caught my attention. So I didn't know if you've seen any differences in the different generations, and even like working to meet the different generations where they are, if that's part of your strategy or things that you've thought about. Just This is an interesting question.
Uh, I I don't think I've come across that. I will say I leave it open. So if after I speak to a candidate, I'll say call, text, email. They usually pick
Hmm.
text. So text messaging is a huge, it's convenience. It's easier to just text someone back on the phone to just follow up or say thank you or anything like that, or just pinging to set up another call. But no, this generation, they are a little bit more hesitant or maybe don't know how to have that conversation just yet over the phone. So I'll meet them there and I'll let them know during a pre-screen it's a little bit more relaxed. I'll definitely give them pointers and guides to when they do get moved to the next phase of the hiring process. But that's a great question. But yeah, It's not too bad, not yet, knock on wood.
That's great. And I have time for, I'm doing one more question. And Keith, I was probably going to throw this to you a little bit just because I do connect with a lot of military members or service members making that transition out of the military and really wanting to continue their mission. And since you had that experience, just a couple things people have asked about DoD Skill Bridge, which I mean, you might have a specific office that works with that, which we can always follow up with them later. But I thought this one, any advice for those who took the military route instead of college? I feel like bots knock me out and overlook 31 years of my experience. There was another one that said, as a transitioning service member with 28 years of experience, I often find it difficult to connect directly with recruiters or hiring managers. I mean, I think what's something that you found that helped you post transition to make the connections that you did?
So, so for me, this is near and dear to my heart. So for me, it all started with participating with the transition program that that the military offers, right? And so because I spent 27 years in uniform, all I knew was get up at 3:30 in the morning, put on a green suit, and go. And so now I have to kind of change my mindset and start thinking more, hey, what color suit am I going to wear the next day? And so
Oh,
I
it's still
started
green
yeah,
for
exactly.
Amentum.
Great. So that transition program that the military offers started that, I think my transition, and connecting with those that are, like, because doing that transition program, you have a lot of recruiters, and just not being afraid of just stepping out and introducing yourself and telling them exactly what you're trying to do, and then getting that kind of guidance. Because I will tell you, I had no clue how to navigate outside of the military, And so I think it's for me, it started there, and just not being afraid of putting yourself out there. And kind of goes back to what you were saying about the resume. If you find something that you're very interested in, make your resume specific for that, for that opportunity. And those are some of the things that they teach you in that transition program, how to write a resume. Because like I said, if you're a career military person, you haven't written a resume in like forever. So I may not have scratched the exact itch, but those are kind of like some high level things. I could go on and on because I've been out of the military now for about 5 years. Still learning, but I think I have a pretty good understanding now of how, to at least navigate the initial transition. Um, so it takes a little time, but it can be done. So.
Now, I think you bring up some really great, I think career events, not to plug clearance jobs here, but at the same time, going to career events, I've watched people walk through, and it's such a great experience, whether you're coming out of the federal government this year and it's been a minute since you've looked for a job, but having that FaceTime with recruiters and just making that connection, even if it doesn't result in something right away, can go a long way, to your point, Keith, of just helping you get out there and have those conversations and then go forward and keep chiseling away at what you want to do. And if you're currently in the military, start your resume day one, and add as you go. I mean, obviously, 28 years later, it's fine. I mean, I don't like to work on my resume right now either. So, so I get it. It's not fun, but
If I can make
yeah.
a plug, I'll make a plug. Over a third of our workforce at Amentum are military veterans. And on our career site, we have a special page dedicated to veterans that has a military skills translator. Now, a lot of employers have that, but beyond that, there is an entire section of resources for career resources, resume resources, career coaching, a plethora of tools you can use to assist you in your career search with Amentum or with other employers just along your journey. We were recognized as a 5-star employer by Military Friendly. We just participated in the Military Times ranking, and out of their 250 employers, we showed up as number 4. The gentleman who runs all of our military recruiting programs is on my team. His name is Brian Heffernan. He just got recognized as National Veteran of the Year by military times. And when I say a third of our workforce are military veterans, that includes our CEO and our chief people officer. So
Yeah.
it is something we take very seriously and something we're very proud of. But I would offer you to go to the career site and see all of those resources that we provide to you in general, hopefully to join us, but in general for your career search as a whole. But Jill, like you said, we also do a ton of virtual events and in-person
Great.
events to try to give you a chance to make a connection, make a relationship, or get to talk to somebody.
Awesome. I love how even here a third of your workforce represented is veteran.
Yeah.
So, well, we are at time. If you've not gotten to your questions, we'd love to follow up with you. And we so appreciate you all joining us. Thanks so much, Jasmine, Jason, and Keith, for sharing all your insights. And thanks to all of you for joining us today and for the great questions.